Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight Episode 93. This is a developer's journey into making cool stuff. I am Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Cocoa Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, watchOS, and visionOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Not AI.
Yeah, I know you channeling a chatbot.
Midway through, I was thinking, it'd be kind of funny just to see if they would get it or not.
Well, I got it. Except you weren't quite cheerful enough to be an OpenAI model. You have to be like super, super obnoxiously cheerful and positive if you're ChatGPT, right? I think that's...
I was watching. There was I don't know why I went through this rabbit hole, but there was like a YouTube video where some tech influencer type decided to create an AI version of him. Like they kind of walk you through like the broad strokes of the way to do it, so that he was able to like fake himself doing like a retirement video, and he sent it to all the tech reviewers to see whether or not they would be able to figure out it was AI or not. And I mean, aside from like the weird neck and the like stringy hand thing, like it's really hard to tell like that's that's AI. I mean, certainly I think because the hardest part about those things is like most people aren't going to spend the time to pay attention unless you point it out, and then that becomes the problem. Yeah, I was thinking like, what is the tell that would say, oh, if like the only thing that I could see aside from those two things, right, of like the weird artifact of the hand and the neck being like really freakily, I don't know, just like stuck in place, so to speak. The only obvious thing that it said, it felt like his voice felt a little drier than usual. It was done by, I think it was a collaboration with like 11 Labs.
I can always tell them. They're pretty good, but they still sound like a robot talking.
Yeah. There's something dry about their delivery. I think that's still, and I keep wondering like, so it never has like range in terms of like the like. Either you tell it to get too enthusiastic, right? So it's like over the top, but it's consistently over the top. But it was like it's either like the way the delivery feels a little too dry or too, depending on what prompt you give it, right? And it just sort of commits to that prompt for as long as you have that thing doing its sound bits. On some level, I think that's kind of an interesting like thing where how much can you do live as a delivery system of like, oh, you cannot, once the session's in motion, can you modify the delivery of something naturally? I guess I guess you can have them change the personality midstream, but it would feel too seems like that would be too jarring to me. I could be wrong.
Well, they're getting better, all the voice models, and they're getting more emotive and reactive, I guess, but I can still tell.
Yeah. But
unless
that's not why
the character's trying to be crazy.
Well, yeah, fair point. But that's not why we're here today. We are here to talk about our progress. Well, okay, one piece of item that we want to make sure we keep everyone up to date with is that we are working, the reason why we even started this podcast was because this is an accountability podcast. This podcast was meant to keep us accountable to do side projects. And in this case, we're doing a group side project called BentoFit, codename BentoFit. It definitely have to work on the name and the branding in the near future.
Yeah.
And Steve, what is BentoFit? What is our elevator pitch for this app that we're building?
BentoFit. The story so far.
The story.
It is a simple HealthKit dashboard app that will surface various metrics and metrics that are in the HealthKit app or historical metrics that we put together as a graph form based on what's in HealthKit. And we're doing that because we wanted better visibility on certain kinds of health metrics based upon our individualized health fitness journeys between kind of more sedentary walking as a primary form of exercise. That'd be Kotaro, me with like a defined like cardio and weight training like regimen that I do like 4 times, 5 times a week. And then Aaron, who's like a triathlon god. I think he was in the running to play Superman in the latest movie, but he just missed out. So you were third, is what I heard.
I don't think you're going to top that one.
Yeah. So we're never going to beat Aaron, who could have been Superman, is what I heard, the rumor mill.
The problem is that Aaron couldn't fly. He's going to work on that.
But that means we have different metrics between, like, Kotaro wants to primarily track walking. I want to track a lot of heart-related metrics and my weight. And Aaron wants to track, like, running and what else? There's some other stuff you want to put in there, right?
Cycling, swimming.
Right, workouts. That's what we need to put in there, workouts. Like specific workouts. That's great. So that's where we are. We have it on our phones. It's working. It loads data. It still needs a lot of polish and work to be production ready, but I mean, like, I'm using it. I check in on it.
Yeah, it is a great. So far, we've gotten to a point where, from the UI point of view, we have a sort of a design language. The general skeletons of the app is there. We just have to sort of decide on the core mechanic of the app, which is, we have to get the core mechanic of the app, which is like adding and removing and customizing each of these data points.
We need the UI to customize. Right now, it's just kind of hard coded in the view, like which HealthKit things to put in there.
Right. The other thing we have to do is architect the way the data is pulled, so we're not pulling everything at once. Although, Steve, I could talk about actually done some work to actually accelerate to speed that up, and I was just curious of your process because I know you went on a vibe ride.
I'm always vibing nowadays because I'm so busy.
How's that journey going?
Yes. So BentoFit Updates, I guess. I think I was the only guy who got actually code checked in. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
okay.
explain myself in a few.
It's fine. And we're trying to put this under my account anyway, so I should be the one who's putting the hours in. So last time I was trying to do two things, which was we were trying to maybe do better async loading of the cards, meaning like potentially have them be independently loadable instead of going through the process of loading everything and then updating the cards. And then the other thing was more HealthKit data, which I didn't get to. I did the first part. Interestingly, though, right now it's still loading in the two-tiered approach we had before because I had things all asyncified. I mean, they are, but I didn't go and I actually reverted a change I'd made in the process where I had them all loading independently because it wasn't really necessary from a speed perspective. It was actually fine to keep loading everything up front like we were doing. I mean, but it's architected so that it can be changed. So the way I made a bunch of changes, and I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Here we go. So I made a bunch of changes in, the app view, the bento card, all kinds of places. Primarily kind of switched things so that we have, I've just been changing the data types we're using to organize all this stuff. So now we have a struct, which is like a card configuration, which kind of bundles together everything you need to know about a card, the type of card it is, how many columns, and then this data provider, which is a closure, and that's a big change. So instead of having, I think we just had a type, we just had like a generic, we had like the bento card class with a generic constraint. So now instead, if you go in to bento card, there's a data provider property, which is a closure that takes in the health model, which is our observable, and then spits out a health data point, which is our type that we use to power the cards. And then that way we can actually be much more flexible about it. And I also have the health model itself updated. Has a whole bunch of individual functions, like if you want to load them all separately. So what you could do is where you go and you set up these card configurations, like right now they're set up in card view. Instead of having it right now I have them, so the closure takes in health model, and then the value that we are observing is just a property off a health model. And so that way, it made it easier to implement the pull to refresh. That was the main reason I changed it back from what we had before. Because I went through a couple other approaches. So think about the problem. You have pull to refresh, right? You have all these cards there, and if each one of them is an independent async card, like each one of them loads itself some way, you have to trigger that when you do the the call. So there's different approaches I went through, and like you could basically kind of create like a trigger property or something. Like there's ways you can kind of do it, and you could think about how to do it with some kind of notifications too. But I'm like, do I need that? And then I checked, and I was like, I don't really need that for performance, at least not yet. So I was like, okay, well, we won't do that. But we have the option. And so instead what I did was I wanted to make sure they all updated when you did load the new data. So the easiest way of doing that is trying to take advantage of the observation framework. I mean, I think we should, because that's what it's for. So that means the closures get a property from the observable, and then when we reload them, we just call the method we had before, which just reloads, does all the async calls in the model, and then as the data comes in on those properties, the cards get updated. So it's kind of like a hybrid approach from maybe what we originally talked about, but it's working. It's super fast. It loads like all the regular cards first.
It is night and day in terms of like I had a spinner just to account for that, and I can't even see the spinner anymore thanks to you.
Yeah, it's really really remarkable how much faster it was once you get the async stuff working right. And also, actually, just changing the API calls. I think most of it we talked about last time was like changing API calls we were using in the HealthKit layer. But yes, it's just it was a bunch of refactoring primarily, and then a little bit on the app view side of things. We could, for like the UI, what we really need to do is provide an array of these card configurations. You can see them. Well, you can't see them, audience, because you're listening. But there's an array of these structs. I mean, and they just need. I mean, they're not too bad. You can see how they get set up. I guess the only wrinkle is you have to pass in like a health model. That is in the environment, so I don't think that's too big of a deal. And yeah, as you can see, you can just set these up in a variety of ways, and you can just keep them in an array. And I could see I could see different ways of adapting this as is. And yeah, that's primarily it. Everything else was just refactored so that it used that data structure essentially, and then got rid of all of the original loading code, which was setting up the health data types inside the view. That all gets done a little more efficiently now in like a function. So yeah, good times. And I did that while sitting at Human Robot in Jenkintown, drinking a beer and hacking away with Aider and Claude Sonnet 4, and I think I spent several dollars doing this.
So for people who don't know the costs between all these models, is that one of the more expensive models that
it's like the most expensive. Well, maybe Opus is more expensive, but the Claude models are the most expensive models.
What do they go by? What do they go around? Is it 25 cents per token or something absurd?
Well,
like 5 cents per token, or
let's see. They go by different rates. So let's go to Open Router and check because they have it listed. So we go to Sonnet 4. And they have, so it's $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. Okay, that in itself is kind of expensive. But what happens is, every time you do a round with one of these models, you keep sending back more and more tokens, and more output tokens come back. So it's like, it gets kind of ridiculous really fast. Now, if you're using something like Claude Code, this is really obvious because it will just churn and churn and churn and churn. And these models, they do the thinking, and the thinking generates tokens and tokens and tokens. So, it's really easy to start just generating up a storm. Yeah. And so every time I would do this, it would be costing me like tens of cents, which is like I was using 2.5 Flash when it was in preview, and it was from Gemini, and that was super cheap. And I'd spend I spent like a couple of cents after like an hour or something on that one or something like that. And now I'm like, I think into the at least tens of cents, dollars for the little bit of stuff I'm doing. And so it's way more expensive, but it is considered the best model. And I was actually using, technically, I think I was using 4, and I think Aider also uses 3.5. I think 3.5 was being used for some aspects of it, and 4 for other aspects.
Like you are manually setting which model you're using, right? You're not letting Aider or OpenRouter.
I set them. Yeah, I'm using Aider. I sent them
to automatically switch.
Yeah, I think by default, Aider will use Claude or look for the API keys. But since I'm using OpenRouter, I set my Aider config to point to the specific OpenRouter Claude 4 model. And then I let OpenRouter pick which provider. I don't really care. They do a good job of picking one that's like an inference provider that's fast enough.
Right. Do you?
And they all cost the
feel,
same right now.
Do you feel like Sonnet 4 is quote unquote better, or like when do you go, okay, you know what, this current model is not doing it for me. I need to level up to a better one. Like at what point do you
like this? Like better than 4?
Like this situation, yeah. Where you're like, okay, I'm gonna pick the best.
I mean, I just did it because I mean, why not use the best if you can afford it?
That's fair.
No, but I wanted to try it out some more. I was using it last time. Mm-hmm. So in my case, it's probably not as important, I think, to use this. Because again, I'm only using it mostly for refactoring stuff. But it did a good job. It didn't have too many compile errors each time. I think I've heard the main advantage of the Claude models, or one of the main ones, the reason people like it so much in applications like Cursor and Claude Code is because if you're using it as like really strongly in an agentic mode, where it's calling tools to do stuff, then the Claude models are the best at tool calling.
What those tools are those specific to Claude's? Like, is that internal
like
to
they
Claude,
would be,
or is that
they're like tools provided to the model by like the thing you're running in it. So like Claude Code, I think as Aider probably does too. Like you can have, because it can write files and stuff. Cursor would be a good example. Xcode, with a new Xcode, has tools in it so that it can examine, like the model can ask for like the file, to be put back, right, and it gets put in the context and that kind of thing. So those tool calls work most reliably, is what I hear on Claude. I don't have any direct evidence of that because I haven't used it much. I think, and the Gemini is supposed to be pretty good, but I mean, I did have times when I've used Gemini a little bit, I was playing around where it seems like it just didn't do things like it said it was going to do. So that's what I hear is the issue with Gemini, that it'll like say it's going to do something and then not do it. So if you think about it, if you're doing a lot of agentic type of work like on this stuff, which you probably are going to be doing a lot if you're doing that, because it's going to F up constantly because it's a stupid program that doesn't actually have intelligence, and it's going to make lots of mistakes. And so you're going to be churning those tokens.
Steven, this is AI, okay? All right? This is AI.
Yeah. But anyway, if you're just like chilling in Cursor, it makes a lot of sense to use the model that's going to give you the best bang for the buck, I guess. There's a lot of other options you can do. It kind of depends what you're doing. For me, I could probably use anything. I could probably use the cheaper Gemini. I did try using Grok 4 a little bit through a chat interface the other day. That's actually an interesting model. It's not specifically for coding, though. But, so I was using it. I spent some money. I think I had to put more money into my OpenRouter account for the first time. I got an email that said, as I had put the $10 in, and I got an alert that said, hey, you need to put more money in before you run out.
I tell you, man, okay, it's going to feel... I'm getting this...
This is what the future feels like.
No, the future is the $200 and $300 a month plans that people are buying now, like the Claude Code one or the Grok super heavy duper mega plan, whatever they call it over there.
I feel like what they're doing is they're just setting you up, right? So like they're just gonna like slowly make you dependent on this delicious.
Absolutely, what they're trying to
this delicious crack drug of a agentic or AI model of any kind, right? And then be like, okay, this is not going to cost you that much. It's only first hit's free, basically. It's just, and then there's this. And
that's what they want.
Yeah. It's like slowly like a boiling frog. They're going to be like, all right, a couple cents here, a couple cents there. It'll be like little microtransactions. And then slowly they're like ramp it up.
I mean, I'm barely using this stuff. The people that are signed up for the Claude, like Claude Code, the $200 a month plan, they use tons of tokens. And Gemini CLI right now is free with like ridiculous free usage rates. I mean, they're like Google is just losing money left and right, hand over fist here, because they don't care about it right now.
Yeah,
all these companies. I think even Anthropic is probably losing money on this. They're all just like trying to get market share, as you said. And at some point, all these prices are going to get way more realistic. It already started happening. So if you use something like T3 Chat, and Theo, who makes that, has talked about some of this in a video recently. like the price for some of these models, it has gone up. Like Gemini went up when it went out of preview. The Cursor had a whole I don't want to sidetrack too much here, but the Cursor had a whole kerfuffle about their price changes, and their pricing changes because the methodology they were used for charging, they changed it to basically, we're going to give you $20 worth of API credits and then charge you the same rate the API charges after you run out. And if you didn't have the settings right in Cursor, people got charged unexpectedly, but I think got resolved. But the point is, they were doing things like, before they were just kind of doing things based on concepts like number of messages, something like that. And that hides how expensive some of these models can be depending on what you're doing because of the amount of tokens that go back and forth and blah, blah, blah. So it's already begun, I think. The economic reality of these things being ungodly expensive to run is starting to peek through. It's starting just a little bit, So $200 a month today, maybe that'll seem cheap in a year. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not spending that
we
much.
We were talking about this today, actually, right, Aaron? About sort of like if it's just two people banging out code or testing stuff, right? Like that's a couple of dollars here, a couple of dollars there. Who cares, right? But like if, for example, you release a product in the wild, if you're not the one making, if you're the one making these sort of like ecosystem apps like a Cursor, like a T3, right? You're kind of at the mercy of the cost of these things can change on the fly, literally, almost like gas,
Yeah.
And you're
and with Anthropic's case, there's multiple inference providers, but they apparently they get very little discount, so there's not a lot of margin.
Yeah,
the prices for Anthropic models don't go down. Some of the other models do. If you use other models, like you can get way better prices, and there's more competition, I guess. Yeah, for these, not really. Well, but yeah, the price could just go up if you got. So I think the thing is about a lot of these, like something like the Claude models, like the tool calling thing, is very important if you're building an application using the model, right? Because we talked about the Foundations model, from Apple, and one of the cool things about that is you can add tools in there. You can have the model do things in your app like that. I mean, you can already do that with the big boy models, but but that's the thing that makes building on top of these models more usable, more useful. It's like the tool calling, because you can do actual work with them.
That when you build it and you have a local model, the local model doesn't have to be a 200 billion parameter model. It doesn't have to be that sophisticated. It just has to understand, quote unquote, understand. I'm adding the air quotes in there because I want to make sure.
Assume air quotes when we talk about this. We're not.
Well, anytime I anthropomorphize, these models, I'm throwing air quotes out there. That it will understand, air quotes, your intent, right? And your like what is generally like, okay, it's asking about the weather. Go to the tool and get the weather. That's almost like the hello world of this world.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Go to like WeatherKit and pull the actual data and bring it back. And in foundation models case, like bring it back in a, reliable strut, a data model of some kind that I can actually utilize and stream back into my app, which in and of itself is an interesting UI. Like I think there's this whole conversation around the next gen UI or UX experience, and I think everybody's sort of like dancing around this idea, it's going to be the chat and the keyboard is going to be the way to interface with this. You're going to be chatting all the time with your app and it's going to auto generate these UIs. To me, I'm like thinking like,
I don't think so.
Back in my day, one of the key things they tell you is like, do not try to incorporate the keyboard or incorporate the keyboard as little as possible. Like just the core bare minimums and then move on.
There's voice interface, but I mean,
but like,
it doesn't have to be.
Who's going to be talking to? How many times do we rely on Dingus?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a chat interface. As you say, using these models, it's like thunder outside.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can hear that, but
it's happening on my side too.
So these models, like if you want them to do something like useful, it doesn't have to be anything about chat interface. Maybe that's part of it, but like you could have them, if you're trying to automate a bunch of processes, the important thing is that they be able to call out to, actual regular software, like regular, tool calls reliably, and then integrate that stuff, and that you have guardrails and stuff around it. But it doesn't have to be a chat interface to initiate that stuff. It could be part of it. It doesn't have to be.
So you alluded to that idea about intent. And I guess this is kind of like a pseudo segue for a little bit of an experiment that I've been doing at work. Was something called app intents, which is kind of like a very, I don't know how long it's been out, maybe since like 16, 17, maybe even earlier.
Yeah, but it keeps seeming like changing what they're...
Yeah, it's mutated a lot. Let me share my screen. But it's actually, like the modern version of it is quite easy to set up. It's almost a little absurdly easy in a way. Can I share my window?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, no, entire screen. Let me share the entire screen.
I'm going to have to file a feedback with Riverside here about their buttons.
Yes. All right, can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. You
okay,
can't.
So I'm bringing up a simulator with BentoFit. What you're seeing and what Steve and Aaron is seeing is basically like something as a very what you would see as a code for an app intent that you just add in as normal as a strut, and you call it, in this case I'm calling something navigate intent. It's a very basic hello world version of an intent. Where I say, hey, I give it a title, I give it a support mode to say, when you activate, bring the app into the foreground, and then very simple. And then you could do, normally you don't even need to do this in a shortcut because shortcuts will do this for you. But this is basically this is basically easy to reveal as a shortcut first.
Nice.
So you see it here. Actually, I should take that back. If you want to, actually, it does expose itself as a shortcut, as an intent in a shortcut. This is more for like outside of shortcuts, but this is basically like if you go in here and you see the BentoFit app with the navigate intent, which is what I had created as a demo within our app. So if you tap on the navigate button, it will just go to our app.
Ooh.
But what's cool about this is that you can create something called an app shortcut from that intent. So in that app shortcut, you create a strut called, in this case, I'm calling it Bento App Shortcuts. It's like a collection of shortcuts that you can create. I am using a protocol App Shortcuts Provider, and you just basically create you can create as many as you want. In this case, and of different types of intents that you can create, and this is where you can expose this app in a variety of different ways, whether it be through Siri, Spotlight. I think you can already do that through I'm not sure what other spots. I think the control panel would be another one.
This is all. It looks like this is where you're putting in the phrases.
Yeah. And that you can add parameters in there. You can configure it in a variety of ways where it doesn't necessarily have to be so fixed in the way I did it. There's some configurations that need to be handled, but like here I actually assigned, you can assign it as that shortcut in the action button there.
So the intent and the shortcut, so like the intent is the functionality and the shortcuts are like wrapping how to execute it from like a phrase and have a title and stuff, so it shows up in UI.
Yeah,
better.
You can add a variety of different ways to ask this the shortcut. Like if I do a search and then
if there's
app
no
name or something
shortcut, can the intent do anything? Be accessed?
It can be accessed through a shortcut, through the shortcut app, But what makes this interesting here is that, or not this one, but actually I can do it that way. But in this case, I can access that through the search. So if I do the BentoFit, now I can access it through Spotlight.
Is that because of the app shortcuts provider you implemented?
Yes. The other thing that makes for this phrasing part, that is also for when you use Siri. So if I go, let me see here. Let me try.
Can you get the keyboard Siri up?
Go to BentoFit. Maybe we'll try the keyboard.
Is this the new stuff that's in 26?
This is actually the funny thing is this is the old stuff.
What's the new stuff? Yeah.
New stuff includes macros to help make it easier to set your parameters and customize your phrasing, as well as also allow you to sort of create them as I forgot how it's termed, but like a token almost. So you can do it in Spotlight, like the Mac Spotlight.
Okay.
Where you can tokenize it and then access it through that way.
I mean, it sounds like, is that maybe more like how you'd set up a tool call for the Foundations model?
Similar in that sense. I think the thing is what fundamentally what App Intents does is what I've been sort of theorizing in my brain about. Apple is slowly trying to, in a weird way, kill the app in the way we know it today. Because now they move a lot of the apps in the app library, right? They want you to stick that in there. They want you to add widgets everywhere, right? And those widgets, also utilize intents. Let me see. I don't think BentoFit does. BentoFit? Oh, BentoFit does have widgets. Oh yeah, because I put them there.
And you can, and the easiest way to do this would be to use Swift UI, right?
Yes.
Although I guess you could use some React Native thing, right? As well.
No, I'm pretty sure that's all native. Those have to be native. That also includes the app shortcuts.
Yeah,
those
I haven't
can't
looked and
be.
see whether you can
I
generate them.
I could be wrong. Those you can't use widgets. Any extensions, I think it has to be native.
Like it has to be Xcode. Like you have to write it in Xcode.
It has to be Xcode. Yeah, yeah.
Like you can't write it.
You could write it in VS Code if you
no,
want.
but I mean you can't.
But it has to be built. Yeah, it has to be.
Can't be TypeScript converted. I don't know. I haven't looked at the latest stuff.
Maybe as long as they like.
My point is, Apple is trying to, I think, make it more appealing to use their native tools.
Yes.
Because it's easier. Now you do this and your tentacles get everywhere in the system.
Yes. I mean, in effect, that's kind of what they're trying to give you the power to do. And I think one of the funny things is not a lot of apps, I feel, do that very well or do a lot of that.
No.
And especially in bigger, especially ones that do the cross-platforming, it's not as much of a consideration.
But I think is becoming much more of a consideration because everybody's trying to make these AI tools for everything. And
well, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to, the thing about any of these AI everything apps or whatever you want to call them, right? These sort of glorified chat apps, is that they really want access to the action button. They really want access to Dingus, but in order to get access to it, you need to, Apple and Android both have intents that give you that access, but I'm not entirely sure about Android, but I know iOS, you definitely need to write that in Swift. So,
yeah. So in the world, I mean, in the world where you have, LLMs as intermediaries, like taking in your input and translating it into, actual calls to your software, the universal UI, perhaps you could call it. Like you need some way of exposing that stuff. It's really funny how like we predicted it. Not to toot our own horns too much, but it's not just us. A lot of people predicted the same exact things. It's pretty obvious when you think about it logically that the first big application that everybody wants of this stuff is actually, like for normal people, not programmers, is actually, I just want my computer to do stuff for me when I ask it.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is
it was a dream of Siri whatever decade plus ago.
Do you feel like, because I'm looking at it in the context of a company trying to build an app that for a UI that still maintains their brand identity, right? Like, that's a huge part of like, I think sometimes when it's like, oh, you can have any UI you want, you just ask it. And I'm like, why as a company would I want that?
I think, I actually think UI design done by people is probably even more important than ever with some of this stuff. Because the world, it's not going to just be chat apps. And if you have a world where think about it as a company, like more of like an indie company. If you build, and this is the way I'm kind of thinking about some things, I think moving forward, if you build like a kind of a design language, and a brand like that works in your on iOS, and you build multiple apps and you expose their functionality that way, especially if you have like a suite of apps that are kind of in the same area, like you have a bunch of fitness apps or something. I can imagine now you can interact with them, kind of orchestrate them. You can orchestrate them through shortcuts. You can orchestrate them through dingus commands. You can, whatever. And they can have their functionality exposed and hopefully, ideally, be able to take output from one and input into another one eventually. You can do that now with shortcuts, I guess. So I just feel like, and then if you have a design language for that, means that all of your widgets would be kind of familiar looking, and your icon designs would be kind of familiar looking. So I feel like you could have. You could do this now, obviously, but you could have like your brand is going to have to be more than just an app icon, more than just what's in the app. It's going to have to extend to anywhere the operating system exposes something, because they're going to expose an app icon or some kind of SwiftUI view, like with widgets or colors. You might even have to think about stuff like, and maybe at some point, maybe the kind of way that the LLMs respond to the output from yours. I don't know. Like that might be something that might come up. Like if you're very heavily integrated and the user is talking to your app, maybe, like Carrot has a personality. Maybe there's a certain way that you're, and it might even be user design, but it might be like the way that the output comes from your apps, from your code in order to be integrated better into LLM flows. Like, there's all kinds of stuff in design.
You do make an interesting point. I am very curious now because the person that made the Carrot app talked about it in some podcast, I think, or some interview where he said he was a screenwriter or something of that kind, and so he hand wrote all that. He pretty much wrote a whole script. So I am somewhat curious now, like, but the joke was this was an AI,
yeah.
The Carrot bot is like an AI robot, right? So
now he could take his scripts and use them to make the LM output something along the same lines.
You could,
and so you could generate things more fluidly potentially.
That's true.
Because if you have a lot of data that you've written like that, like high quality stuff, you feed them into these. You can create little bots that kind of mimic your style and maybe even mimic like the types of answers you would give if your content is all in the same kind of area of expertise and it's detailed enough. So, that kind of thing, again, I think that's kind of part of design too. Like the corpus you're going to feed into these tools. And you need good quality, handcrafted data sometimes.
I would say it's kind of interesting. Some of the things, like the examples that Apple had provided, the foundation model one about the landmark. I think that was relatively eye-opening when you press the generate itinerary button for like some landmark, and then you kind of see the UI kind of constructs itself gradually over time.
Imagine doing that in UI kit. Because it's definitely a react. I mean, you could do it, but it's a reactive UI. It works easily because it works very easily because their output is just the complete string to display in this view, and then SwiftUI takes care of animating the transitions for you.
Yes.
So, but it makes it look really cool.
Because it's done as a stream versus apparently like this is not something you
stream?
can easily an async stream. So basically, as the tokens come in, it just constructs or in this case, as the struts come in, then it just sort of like streams and constructs everything. Or if the text if it's a token, then it'll just like and then it will like slowly creep in, like slowly like animate itself in. Which I think there's something to be said about that kind of like absurd because I think the other thing that gives that particular model or the foundation model an interesting twist is the fact that because it's streamed, it's not something that you can easily pull off with a remote LLM.
Right.
Because it's so local, the feedback is so fast and fluid. Whereas I think in the other one, that takes time for it to come back in a constructed manner, like a fully fleshed out manner.
People keep talking about Apple not being innovative or behind the times or whatever. When you're in the trenches looking at their architecture patterns and their code bases, async stream is not new. That's built on stuff from several years ago. It's like they're really good at building on top of their previous architectural decisions, and they seem to be really good at making good architecture decisions. They sometimes will roll things back and whatever, but like anyone else. But they're good. That's impressive. They built this async stream thing, and then this was before I think they were thinking about LM type stuff on there. They weren't building it for that or anything. It's useful for a lot of approaches, and they just built on top of it. Just one small example where I think people who aren't in the trenches don't give Apple enough credit for how forward-thinking they are sometimes with their design decisions at the software level.
I am very curious to see. One of the things that I think is interesting, and this probably might be something that long-term other companies will probably figure out, is like coming up with some kind of really small model. Like Aaron, you and I have talked about this as like the dream thing where we can get an optimized model. For the most part, its job is to handle the distribution of intents of like, okay, I know you're asking for the weather. Go to this weather API and bring me back something, that I can rely on. Or I know you're asking for the news. Give me like a list of articles and summaries of all of them and of the top 10 news or whatever. Right? Just something that, and maybe the tools can be sort of the sort of the ecosystem, right, for which you can kind of like construct that kind of like reliable data, reliable source of truths, right, that you can then construct an entire app around.
Yeah, I think the focus on LLMs is, I think that the whole industry seems to be starting to realize that there's a diminishing returns on them, and so they've been looking at the other approaches that kind of mix LLMs with other kinds of quote unquote AI and like things like tool calling and like agentic kind of things, just running things in a loop essentially to oversimplify it. And like these other kind of hybrid approaches are really giving more bearing more fruit than just the straight up let's make one gigantic model that just does everything by itself. And so I could see definitely a place for the local stuff like we talked about before. The edge computing platform that Apple has is best suited for that right now, I think.
I really feel like I really feel that it would be crucial for that to work offline and work in a way that is like any of the basic vanilla stuff that, might have been like the early version of ChatGPT would be fine for the most part to do general like, oh, I get what you're talking about. I just don't have the tools to like know the up-to-date information, but I know where to look for it, right? And then maybe some of the level of like mixing and matching different, and it doesn't all have to be LLMs. It could just be like a simple calculator, right? Like I don't need an LLM to calculate, double-digit numbers or do the square root of something, right? We already have something that's optimized for that. Call it a computer. But
so app intents are, you think, the future of the platform?
I think,
and we talked about that before being true, but now it feels much more likely.
I think app intents are kind of like Apple's sort of like nudge to tell app developers like, look, you can still have your app, but your app is going to be less important. The experience inside the app is going to be less important than the experience you have to extend. Like any of the stuff of like what's new or like a simple function like an add a notes or make reservations, that can be done via intents.
It's like the user interfaces in the app have to be composable because they need to be separatable.
Yes.
And be exposed outside of the main app launch, I guess, app window.
Now, to be fair, like the counter argument to that, I think, is like you are somewhat beholden to, whatever Apple's, interfaces are, I guess. You always were, but at least you were stuck in that little app, your little,
your
that little square, your little rectangle. If you're going to have that connection, if you want to have that extension, you have to sort of build out an infrastructure for that.
Well, I mean, the way I think about it kind of depends on the app. Like Photoshop is not going to be driven primarily by something like app intents. I mean, but
no.
But so you're going to need a good primary interface depending on what your app does. But something like a lot of iOS apps are pretty small and focused, and it might make sense for most of your interaction to be through intents.
Like I could say like Airbnb, and a good example would be like Airbnb and or like I don't know, like a Zillow or Redfin would do great with a simple widget that just tells me what like Redfin does have a widget that tells me like what the least recently listed houses are. Or let me see if Airbnb has anything.
People build their home screens up with widgets, man. I mean, I don't do that very well, but I'm old school.
Well, the only reason why I'm saying that as something that's in the future is because Apple is constantly trying to like expose it. Whether it be through CarPlay in standby mode, whether it be through live activities, whether it be through in Vision Pro, they have
Dynamic Island.
Dynamic
Does that work? Is Dynamic Island app intent, or it's like a widget, right? It's all kind of in the same.
It's a widget.
The same thematically, the same thing.
Technically a live activity, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So live activity, but they're all like like similar thematically. They're like exposing functionality in a way that makes sense outside the main apps. You don't have to launch it to gain access to it, and and it makes sense. I actually like Dynamic Island stuff. I think it's actually really useful.
Yes, but yeah,
app intent. So we're going to do an app intent, is what you're saying.
Well, the thing is, like, this is the one scenario where I almost feel like BentoFit. I don't know where the use case for BentoFit is for app intents. I do know, or I do have an idea of like a different mechanic for like focus mode. You can actually, you think focus mode is much more at a system level, and in terms of like, oh, I want to focus on work, or I just want to focus on driving or whatever, right? Those are like the stereotypical example. Yes. So, but you can create focus mode versions of that in the app itself. So we could have like, slouch, Kotaro mode, Steve mode, and Aaron mode.
That'd be fun. Well,
and then we'll
play around with
customizable dashboard. Yeah. But that's a different conversation for another podcast.
Yeah.
But in terms of app intents, I'll think about it. I don't have an idea for it just yet for our app.
Yeah.
But yeah. I guess we can call it a day unless you have Aaron, do you have any updates on your side in terms of any work that you've done?
Maybe I'll finally get this workout thing that I've been working on for ages. Every time it's like I'm about ready to merge it in, and then Steve makes a big change to the model. And I think it's just about ready. I need to put it.
This is why like master branch or trunk based development is a useful technique, because
that's just
everything's in there.
It's just
everything's going in.
I just haven't had much time to work on it.
Yeah, PRs, man. PR workflows are the devil.
Yes, they are. Well, they can be.
Feature branch. It's technically more like feature branch development is the devil.
All right. Well, that's all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you can find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is. And please share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. This might be the last time I do this bit of promo, because Asam Sharp's Foundation Model Framework course is out. It's a living document, so to speak. It's an online course that Asam Sharp, our good friend, or Mohammed Sharp, Muhammad Asam, is writing right now. And it's kind of like a work in progress course, but a good chunk of it is available right from the start, where basically you can learn all the ins and outs of the new iOS 26 foundation model framework, get an understanding of stream responses, guided generation, tooling, integrations with Swift UI, just a lot of cool stuff that allows you to build your own recipe app that dynamically creates recipes for you. Dad jokes, he has a whole ton of funny examples. But because he hooked us up, we have a coupon code. If you put in the coupon code Philly, PHILLY, you get a discount for 40%.
Nice.
But that expires July 31st. So this is definitely the last time.
This will be the last episode.
Yeah. So
he's not a sponsor. We just he just gave us this code to share with the community here, and we like Ozum he makes good tutorials.
He does.
Which I still think are relevant in the world of LLMs. I'm sorry. I know some people don't, but I think curated, carefully put together tutorials are still useful.
Yeah, I mean, and usually...
And if we don't make them, then how are the LLM providers going to steal them and put them into their models? So...
Yeah, there's that. Anyway, until next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always.
If we don't make them, then how are the LLM providers going to steal them and put them into their models?